When Nick was young, a woman forced herself on him. 6 months later, she gave birth to a child and pressured him to take responsibility. So he did what he believed was the right thing and married her. But married life became a long and painful ordeal. Every day, his wife dressed up and went out, leaving him alone at home to care for the baby. One day, he quietly followed her. What he saw confirmed his worst fears. She was having an affair. When she returned home, she showed no guilt at all. Nick completely broke down. In a moment of rage, he shoved her. That single push changed everything. She struck the back of her head and stopped breathing instantly. Before he could process what had happened, a drop of water landed on her forehead. Then he remembered the baby in the bathtub. He ran upstairs. But he was too late. Their infant son, only 1 month old, had drowned. In one night, Nick lost everything. His wife and child were both gone. He was convicted of murder and sentenced to 15 years in prison. 5 years later, during gallbladder surgery, he managed to escape. He ran into a nearby grocery store and took a young boy hostage. In a firm voice, he told the boy's mother, "Take me with you." Her name was Ella. She was divorced and raising her son Henry on her own. Terrified, Ella had no idea what this stranger intended to do. She never could have imagined that this fugitive would completely change her life. On the road, they passed a police cruiser. Nick held a knife to Henry and Ella dared not make a move. The police car drove right by. The three of them arrived at Ella's house. As soon as they entered, the television was broadcasting news of a convicted killer who had escaped from prison. Ella turned pale. Nick understood that if he did not make this look like a real kidnapping, Ella and Henry could be charged with helping a fugitive. He had no intention of hurting them. He only wanted to protect them. He gently lifted Ella's feet onto a chair and carefully tied her with rope, doing his best not to scratch her skin. That only frightened her more. She could not understand what kind of man he really was. Then he walked into the kitchen and started cooking. When the meal was ready, he blew on the food to cool it and fed her one bite at a time. Ella stared at him in confusion. He was a convicted killer, yet his eyes were filled with tenderness. Late that night, Nick untied her and prepared to leave. But police cars were circling outside. There was no way out. The next morning, he made a large breakfast. As he talked with Henry, he learned that Ella had been divorced for 10 years and had spent an entire decade raising her son alone. After breakfast, Ella did something that caught Nick off guard. She picked up the rope and handed it to him. She was not giving up. She was telling him that she trusted him. It was Labor Day and the trains were not running. Nick had no choice but to stay one more day. He began helping around the house. He repaired the steps, organized the clutter, and serviced the car. He taught Henry how to change a tire and how to play baseball. The scene looked exactly like a father teaching his son. Watching from the window, Ella felt her eyes fill with tears. She picked up a needle and thread and mended Nick's torn pant leg. Their eyes met. Neither of them said a word, but the air between them was filled with warmth. Then a sudden knock broke the moment. Nick immediately grabbed Ella from behind and signaled for Henry to answer the door. It was the neighbor. She brought over a basket of peaches and warned them to be careful because an escaped convict was on the loose. Henry had the perfect chance to ask for help. But he did not. He sent the neighbor away. Nick was deeply moved. The boy had accepted him. Holding the basket of peaches, Nick offered to make them a dessert. Step by step, he taught Ella and Henry how to bake a peach pie. Flour covered the kitchen. The three of them looked like a complete family. The sweet aroma of peach pie filled the house. Every accidental touch made Ella's heart beat faster. She had not felt this way in a very long time. That night, Nick slowly placed his hand around her waist. She hesitated for a moment, then leaned into his arms. She closed her eyes and surrendered to the peace of that moment. Nick no longer wanted to leave. For the first time in his life, he understood what home felt like. But he also knew that staying would only put them in danger. As the last police car drove away, he stood up to leave. Ella stopped him. That night, she finally shared the pain she had carried for 10 years. Her ex-husband had loved children. When they tried to have a second child, she suffered miscarriage after miscarriage. On the 5th pregnancy, she gave birth prematurely. The baby did not survive. From that day on, her world collapsed. She stopped going out and stopped seeing people. She felt like an empty shell. Through tears, she told him that she was not worthy of him. Nick held her close and whispered that, in a way, they were both prisoners. Perhaps that was exactly why they had found each other. Together, they decided to flee to Canada. Ella told Henry about their plan. He hated leaving the house, but he wanted a complete family even more. The next morning, they began packing. Then Henry suddenly ran out. He wanted to say goodbye to the girl he liked. She was clever enough to understand immediately. When Henry mentioned Canada, She realized that the escaped convict was hiding in his house. Henry panicked and admitted the truth, but he trusted her to keep the secret. On his way home, Henry was stopped by a police officer who became suspicious when he saw the boy out of school on a Monday. The officer insisted on driving him home. When Ella saw the patrol car, her heart nearly stopped. The officer noticed that their car was packed with luggage. Ella quickly claimed they were taking things to a yard sale. The officer accepted the explanation and left. But Nick had watched everything from upstairs. He knew they could not wait any longer. He urged Ella to go to the bank, withdraw cash, and leave immediately. At the bank, the unusually large withdrawal raised suspicion. Ella became so nervous that she almost exposed their plan. Fortunately, Henry stepped in and helped smooth things over. Meanwhile, back at the house, the neighbor unexpectedly saw Nick. He quickly claimed he was a repairman, though he was not sure whether she believed him. The moment the neighbor left, Ella and Henry rushed back. The three of them frantically loaded the remaining items. Then they heard police sirens in the distance. Ella panicked and desperately tried to hide Nick. But Nick knew there was no time. He pulled her into his arms. Then he picked up the rope and tied her up once again. Not to hurt her, but to make sure everyone would see the truth he wanted them to see. That she was a victim of kidnapping. Only then would she and Henry be safe from prosecution. He looked at her and said goodbye in the gentlest voice she had ever heard. Then he kissed her and walked out the front door. He surrendered. No one ever knew exactly how the police found him. What was known was that his escape and kidnapping charges added 10 more years to his sentence. 20 years in total. Ella did everything she could to help him. She hired lawyers and tried to prove that she had never been kidnapped. But the attorneys warned her that helping a fugitive was a serious crime. She could go to prison and lose Henry. So she wrote letters, one after another, and she visited the prison again and again. But Nick refused every visit and would not even read her letters. Ella understood why. He was still protecting her, but she never gave up. 20 years passed in what felt like the blink of an eye. Henry grew into a successful man. He opened a thriving pie shop. Its most famous item was the peach pie Nick had taught him to make. One day Henry received a letter. Dear Henry, my sentence is almost over. I do not know whether your mother has found someone else. If she has not, I want to ask you one question. Do I still have a chance? Your friend Nick. Henry did not hesitate for a second. He wrote back immediately, because he knew his mother had been waiting for this day for 20 years. At last Nick was free. Ella stood at their meeting place and watched a distant figure slowly approach. She had waited until her face was lined with wrinkles. She had waited until her hair had turned gray. And finally, she had waited long enough to see him again. 20 years. She had traded 20 years of waiting for the chance to spend the rest of her life with him. From the moment that man entered her life on Labor Day, two lonely hearts were destined to heal each other. No matter how much time passed, the love between them never changed. Their story was not loud or dramatic, but the sincerity and warmth they shared shone like starlight in the night sky, quiet, endless, and everlasting.